So I got a question the other day in one of the comment sections about how I go about making one of my slappers that I've used in some of the other videos. So I figured this would be a good time for me to do a video on it. So a little bit of information on the slapper. I get these lasered out into a flat straight blank like this of A400 steel. That's good corrosion resistant, strong steel. I've done my early prototypes out of just standard 1018 and had good luck. I've used spring steel, I've used chromoly, I've used some higher carbon stuff, and I haven't noticed a whole lot of difference other than some of the heat treating stuff. So with the AR400, I don't really get it heat treated. It seems to hold up pretty well, and we're gonna run with those for a while and see how they do. So I get them lasered out into blanks like this. They show up, I usually order 50 to 100 at a time. And then I set up the press brake and I bend them into this shape here, which I'll show you here in a minute how I do that. And then it all comes down to a series of sanding and polishing the face and kind of deburring the edges. And we'll walk through that through, you know, taking the rough blank, bending it in the press brake, all the way up to sanding, polishing, and finishing off by stamping my logo on it. So I'll get the press brake set up and we'll do the first operation on making your own slapper. So if you want to make your own slapper and you don't have a press brake, you can just use a standard sheet metal brake that's capable of doing the material thickness that you want to use. The main reason I use a press brake is A, I have one in the shop, and B, like I said, when I do them in batches of 50 to 100. So it's a lot easier to set the machine up and it's programmed and they all come out the same. So this process is the same whether you're using a manual brake for doing one at home or if you're doing a production run with a press brake. All right, so first thing, I have to set up the press brake, and I have a little board here that I put a lot of stuff on that I use a lot. So I can come over here to my slapper, and it tells me what the V block is, which I've already got that set up, and then it tells me my XP and my YP and my back gauge. So I'll turn the machine on, and I'll go ahead and I will program the dimensions we need. And then the machine will cycle through and get itself set up. I'll dry run it, and then I'll bend our slapper up here. All right, now that the machine is set up with our parameters from the list, I will put our slapper in here and put it on the back gauge, and then I'll take a square and I'll line it up so it's nice and square. I'll bring it down till it touches to hold it. And that's our first bend. You can see there. So then what I do is I line this mark up on the edge of our V block there, and I rebend, and then we've got our handle all bent. All right, so we're here at the Burr King belt sander, and I've got a 120 grit belt in here now, and what I like to use is I like to use the bottom of the drum here to start smoothing everything out on the slapper. So we'll do that, and I'm going to go from 120, and then I'll jump up to this really cool Trizact belt that I've got that's a little bit finer grit, and then a super fine belt. I don't know what the grit is on it, but it's a real fine. It almost polishes as it goes. And then we'll jump over to the buffer, and we'll buff the face up and get it nice and shiny and clean. And while I was sanding this, you could see me kind of dip it down into a bucket of water, and that was mainly just to keep the material cool. That way I didn't have to worry about heat buildup or changing anything in the grain structure of the metal due to heat buildup. So I kept the material nice and cool, quenched in water as I worked, so it never got really hot. All right, so I've got the slapper all sanded down. I got the slapping face all smoothed out. I kind of deburred the edge a little bit so there's nothing sharp for your hands. And then up here, I went ahead and cleaned this spot for your hands on the top side, and that's where I stamped my logo in it. So it's all nice and clean and ready to buff. So then we'll use a cotton buff wheel. I'll start with a brown rouge, and then I'll jump over to the other side of the buffer, and I'll use a green rouge, and I'll get this all shined up. All right, so everything's buffed up. Other than some fingerprints you'll see here in the video, everything's nice and cleaned up. I can go over it with some glass cleaner and get the smears off of my oily hands. So this is pretty much all wrapped up, other than I have to go over to the press, and I'm going to stamp my logo here in it for the finishing touch. So we'll do that, and we'll get this thing shipped off to the client. All right, so we're going to stamp my logo in the slapper, and I've got this stamp tool that was made by Buckeye Engraving for me. It's got my logo on it. So it's a super simple process. Line the stamp up, make sure everything's where you want it to be. You just run the ram down. I run about 40 tons on it to put the logo in there. All right, so now it's branded and I can get it all cleaned up and ready to ship out. Well, that's pretty much how I go about making one of my slappers. So hopefully you guys found the video informative and have a better understanding of how I go about making some of the tools I do. It's nothing really super complicated, but a lot of this stuff you guys can do at your own shop. Again, you can use a manual brake, a press brake. I mean, for something this simple, you could even use a vise, heat it up a little bit, bend it to where you need it, and slappers are super handy. So hopefully this video was informative, like I said, and let me know what you think down in the comment section, and please rate, review, and subscribe, tell a friend, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.